Now to tell you what we've been up to. So what we're going to do is start from when we got started with the vote, when the schools decided, the 4 schools decided to come on, and we will tell you what we have done so far, clear until today. So what we're going to do at this time is have each of the schools come up and introduce themselves and what school that they are with. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Salmons. I'm here with Free State High School.
Amy McInerney, also with Free State High School.
Myron Graber, Free State.
I'm Bailey Thaler, Broken Arrow. Amanda Green, Broken Arrow.
Brian McCaffrey, Broken Arrow.
Hi, I'm Christine Caffey. I'm from Hillcrest.
I'm Nancy Julo, and I'm also from Hillcrest.
And Tammy Becker from Hillcrest.
All right. Okay, so Michelle, you're next up.
All right, so I'm going to kind of talk about this summer and really what we did, at least for us at Free State. In May, our staff voted on who they wanted to be their pilots, and we ended up with 3 pilots, and we figured we're a large school, 1,800 students, biggest school who's gone through redesign. So my 2 other pilots couldn't be here, Steve Heffernan and Amy Landwehr. But the 3 of us, we did a book study over the summer, which I believe all the other schools did as well. This was brought to us through KSDE. So the new school rules, and let me just show you what those are. These are 6 vital practices for thriving and responsive schools. So not to just read off of the slides, but these 6 things have definitely helped us form a common language now that we are building our teams. When we think about, well, having teams, those teams maybe not always, when we see a purpose for them, we'll form teams. When we see that something's no longer serving a purpose or a new purpose comes about, we disband or we bring something new in. Building trust, allowing authority to spread. This number 3 comes in like almost every time we meet. What's the work we need to get done? And that helps us decide then who do we need in order to get that stuff done. And so I think we're going to be getting into that safe enough to try. I hear that's a big term in the redesign world. And then we'll keep going, sharing information, trying to make this process as transparent as possible. And then hopefully, growing as a school. Next. Yeah.
So this kind of shows a picture of where we've been. So Michelle kind of spoke to that research and some of that developing our why. In September and October, we did a lot of listening to through the blitzes that they're going to visit about a little bit more, and then kind of shows the picture of where we're headed for the rest of the year as well.
Up next. So redesign, at the state level, they developed 4 principles that the work should kind of evolve around. What I really like about this, as Hillcrest started to do some things last year, is it ties very nicely to our KISA plan. If you think about the district's KISA focus, it was on relationships and relevance. And for me, the student success skills and the partnerships with families in our community, those would be the relationships. And then the relevance piece, personalizing learning so that we know where kids are and allowing kids then to move from where they are and not holding kids back or not pushing so fast that some kids, everything goes right over them. And then the real world application would be, again, those life skill or those 21st century skills of getting out there and doing projects, doing community service, that kind of thing. The student success skills is an interesting one from the standpoint of, I know when the state really started this work, it was really about the social and emotional learning, which is a huge piece. But we're discovering as we have conversations that there's other success criteria that needs to go in there, and that's being able to speak in front of a group, collaborate with a group of peers to do a project. So you'll find that a lot of them are really intertwined, but there's a lot of things that fit under one or more of them.
So one of the measures that you see here is the Kansas Can Lead effective rate for graduation effective rate. So this is Free State's exact slide here that I put up here. Basically, we're talking about the 5-year graduation rate, the 5-year success average, and the 5-year effective average. And if you look at the next slide, you could see these are actually an indicator that we have to report to the state on. So the graduation rate is always based on a 4-year cohort. Graduation rate is the number of students who graduate after 4 years with a regular high school diploma divided by the number of students who entered high school as 9th graders. They figure that success rate through a student must meet one of the 4 following outcomes within 2 years of high school graduation. 1, a student must have earned an industry-recognized certification while in high school. A student must earn a post-secondary certificate. A student could earn a post-secondary degree, or a student must stay enrolled in post-secondary in both the first and second year following high school graduation rate. And then the effective rate is calculated by the graduation rate multiplied by the calculated success rate. So if you go back to the previous screen, the state's recommender where they would like to see you is with an effective rate of 70 to 75%. So that means that 70 to 75% of our students met one of those previous 4 criteria. And right now, I think in the class of 2017, we were at like 62 or 62%. And so the ultimate goal here through redesign is success for all students. Now you might say, well, one thing it does not count in students who go directly to work after high school. So if I go directly into the workforce, I'm not counted in on this. If I go into the military, I'm not counted in on this. But you can create your own district level measurements for those students. So the ultimate goal is to try to reach 100% of the students to meet a particular goal area. So this is just kind of an example of what those look like. So the process that we have engaged in is a little bit different than the rest of the state. This process is done through the Think Wrong Institute from KU. We connected with John Bielenberg at the beginning of the summer. Jerry was able to connect me with him, and he actually came to Free State's first opening session on August 8th, spent a half a day with us. John came about the Think Wrong Institute. He was a graphic design artist on the West Coast, and he started watching companies as they go through the process of change. And he keeps, in his book, he talks about how we always go back to the status quo. We always return back to the status quo. And your brain does that automatically to you. So you have to train it to think wrong, and that's where this came from, is the whole think wrong process. So we were able to utilize him for a half a day on August 8th. And it's pretty hard for the Free State staff, or 100% of them, to agree on anything. They agreed that this was the best day, best PD day that we'd had. So it was an amazing experience. He takes you through a series of activities and processes to try to get you to think a little bit differently about how you go about it. So we're applying this to school redesign. What can we think? How does that work? So here's a video with John. We'll try to get this to work here, maybe.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to convince you in the next 10 minutes that thinking wrong is right. And you can think about this as the secret to busting the status quo. And you might ask, why does that matter? Well, this line terrifies me because this line represents the predictable path. So this is the status quo that we're all on right now. It's like business as usual. So why does this matter? Well, we have things like climate change happening. Population is actually still exploding in the world. Wildlife reduction drastic since 1970, and a lot of other problems. I actually think that we have more increasing challenges now than we've ever faced before. So there's another path, a bold path, that goes up off of that. But everything is conspiring to bring that line down to the status quo. So how do people like Picasso in art, or Jane Goodall in science, or Steve Jobs in business, how do they escape the gravity of the status quo and get on that bold path? Well, I think there's something happening right at that juncture, at that inflection point, that I'm calling thinking wrong. So why is this hard? Well, our brains are conspiring against us. Here's a good example. Surfer gets munched off the coast of Australia. People in California stay out of the water, right? There's no statistical correlation between the two, but here's what's happening in your brain. Shark attack, bad, that's A. There's a superhighway connection, a synaptic connection in your brain to a behavior, stay out of the water. So we don't have to think about it. We just follow that pathway, input and behavior. It's automatic. Culture's also conspiring against us. So if you think of a lot of brains all going on their synaptic connections, their orthodoxies, their heuristic biases, those are conspiring as well. So we've got your brain and culture conspiring. So traditionally, problem-solving orthodoxies are like the rational, it has to be rational, return on investment, best practices. You have to use what's been done before to solve challenges, or have a really tight strategic plan. So this is where those usually operate up in that quadrant of the known and the certain. So if you ever work for large organizations, they love to exist up in that quadrant. Thinking wrong is down in the bottom. So this is the uncertain and the unknown. So if you think about that bold path, you can't follow predictable pathways to get there. In 2003, I started a program for kids getting out of college before they get jobs called Project M. And the whole goal of it was to kind of infect these young creative people with thinking wrong to solve big challenges. So we've been all over the world. This is Costa Rica, New Orleans after Katrina, East Baltimore. We usually go to a place that's distressed in some way, so there's a big challenge. This is Reykjavik, Iceland after their financial collapse. Rural Connecticut, we did a project to celebrate local farming called Pizza Farm. This is Detroit, built some horseshoe pits in vacant lots. This is the Gulf of Alabama after the BP oil spill. This is Frankfurt, Germany, highly illegal, I'm not going to talk about. And this is rural Alabama, where we've done a lot of projects over the past few years. So after 10 years of Project M and teaching these kids to think wrong, I've come up with 6 practices, which I'll go through really quickly. Another way to think of this is the CrossFit of design thinking, if you know that term. So the first is be bold. Steve Jobs called it the dent you want to make in the universe. Google X calls it the moonshot. And this is, are you thinking big enough? So if you're going to tackle a big challenge, you want to set the bar really high. Get out. This is all about getting out of your patterns of working and your orthodoxies. Go where you've never been before. Let go. This is to let go of these pre-existing ways of solving problems. Stop the habitual problem solving. Making stuff. A lot of times if you're working with organizations, there's a lot of conversation and you have contrarians and devil's advocates, and these ideas get stopped before they even start. And there's a point where you just want to start making. Bet small. Taking risks is scary, but when you frame them as small bets, I don't know if this is going to work, let's just place a small bet and see, and we'll learn from it. It alleviates some of that. Move fast. This is after you've placed small bets, how do you capture that and create momentum around the project? So I'm going to give you an example here. This is a Project M that started in Belfast, Maine, where I live. The girl in the middle there, Rosanna, was really into pie. And I didn't really care. I thought it was kind of stupid. But it happened to be March 14th, so 3.14 pi, P-I. And they thought that was clever. So they did an event on the streets of Belfast, Maine called Free Pie, where they baked pie, had coffee. A lot of people came, and it spawned conversations. And the idea was that these conversations would lead to projects in action. And that was so successful, they went down to Alabama, where we had a home base in Greensboro, Alabama, took over half our studio. This is the studio. And for $600 of materials, they built out pie boxes and tables and got chairs and opened up this pop-up pie lab. This is an area of the country that's deeply segregated, and so they have white churches and black churches, white restaurants, black restaurants. Rarely do everybody meet at the same place. So we had one table, no takeout. They ran that for the summer and took over this space on Main Street in Greensboro, Alabama. And it looked like that. This is the team of students when we started. And then they had to renovate it and make it into what they called Pie Lab. It was 100 degrees in August in that shot. This is wood from sharecropper cabins they got for free. We had a total budget of $8,000 from Kickstarter. $6,000 we had to use for the heating and air conditioning. These walls roll and reconfigure the space. This is what it looks like now. We came in second in the James Beard Awards for restaurant design that year. And we lost out to the Guggenheim. And now it's a full-service restaurant. We bake pies and have lunch and dinners. The girl on the left is in something called the Youth Build program, where they teach kids how to run a restaurant and get their high school degree. We have pie baking contests, and we have musical groups coming in. We have open mic nights. So it's become this real place that the community can gather on Main Street in Alabama. This is a silk screening workshop for kids. And what's happened was there were 70% of boarded up windows in this little town. And now they've started to renovate. These are two buildings across from Pie Lab that are renovated. The Opera House got funding and is currently being renovated. This is what Greensboro looks like now. And probably 25% of the storefronts are empty. And recently, NBC News said it's one of the most influential zip codes in America, Hale County, Alabama. So, thank you very much.
All right, so that was just a quick introduction again for the Think Wrong process. And we jumped right in and started engaging in that process with not only staff, but also our community members and students. So I'm just gonna take a little bit of time to talk with you about the student blitz that our elementary students engaged in. We took 90 students, so 30 students from Broken Arrow, 30 students from Hillcrest, and then 30 students from Deerfield across the grades 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade to all go over to Deerfield and think wrong together. So they were asked to really focus around one goal, which was to design their ideal school. And I had the opportunity to be there with them during this time, and it was so neat to hear their perspectives and to hear them just really think outside of the box and be pushed a little bit with their thinking as well, just like we were during the staff blitzes. So I just have a few pictures here to share with you. But what they first did is they split the students up. So they were working with students not only from their home school, but also from Hillcrest, Deerfield, or Broken Arrow. And they asked them to tell us 10 things, to write down 10 things that they love about school. And students were able to do that very quickly. And then they said, okay, now tell us 10 things that drive you crazy about school. And they were able to do that even more quickly. And then after that, they said, okay, think about 10 things that you would love to have at your school that would make you love coming to school every single day. And I'm sure we can all guess, right? Longer recess, more lunch. But they also had wonderful ideas about student choice. They wanted inspiring teachers and opportunities and a lot of things that went around relevance and personalized learning. They didn't quite use those words, but that's what they were referring to. So really neat experience for not only those students, they went back to their schools, and I know that our Broken Arrow students were incredibly excited to share with their teachers and everyone else. And so they then got to design their ideal school with those ideas, and then they stood up and they shared. They chose a mascot, they had a title for their school, so they really kind of got to run with the idea. We collected all of those and took those back to our staff, and were able to kind of look through those ideas from students and use that to drive our work as at the Staff Blitz.
At Free State, we also did a student blitz with the gentleman from Think Wrong. We had 60 students, and we asked teachers if they would give us names of students, because we really wanted a broad selection of students from all backgrounds. It was interesting to us because the 60 students that came in, and we're such a big school, most of them didn't really know each other or know each other that well. They pretty much self-selected where they sat. They weren't broken up. But even though they didn't know each other very well, they had some really deep conversations. It was nice to see, even though maybe they didn't have a relationship with the people that they were sitting with at the table, but they had some really good discussions. So our students were asked to write down what student success looked like. And what you see up here is a word cloud of the challenges that students felt that they and others faced. So we made a word cloud of the challenges, and our staff has been able to look at all the information from the students also. But you notice that the words that appear the largest, those are the ones that came up the most times in all the student discussions. And they didn't all exactly mean the same thing. They all have some different perspectives. You notice that mental health is a big one. That could mean many things to students. Our students were concerned and put the idea of students not having enough to eat, students not having a home. All of those things were combined into mental health, as well as what we also think about mental health. Time, a lot of our students, the theme of being overwhelmed and overworked and overloaded. You see workload up there. Support was another one. Flexibility. A lot of students talked about they really wanted to be able to take the classes they wanted to take. They wanted more flexibility in their schedule. And then relationships came up a lot also, that they really wanted deeper relationships with the staff at Free State. So our staff is continuing to look at these as we gather information from staff. We feel like we've got a good base from students, but we'll continue to involve students and get their input.
The elementary staff came together also, and they looked at kind of a similar layout as the high school had done as well, kind of looking at what does student success look for us. But they started by grounding us in what we really enjoyed about school, what we remembered of those things that, like, when you really loved it and really loved being there, just to kind of get us thinking of those moments that pop up to us, because we always, as teachers, kind of get, going on testing or this or that, and what do we remember out of school? What kind of brought us, to that place of excitement? So they started there, and they kind of worked out from, what do we need for success? What challenges are we seeing? What can we do to fix that? And they had us start with our groups, and then we kind of took other people's challenges that they saw, and we took those and tried to build from those. So it was a really neat experience to see how our staff from 3 different elementary schools were seeing things. But again, we kind of took the words and the common themes we saw, and we were looking at things like hands-on. We wanted our students to be doing things where they could be involved with their learning, some purpose behind that learning. And the big focus for all 3 buildings was that student success. They drove what all of us wanted to see, and have our students build that kind of self-confidence and that want to be a learner, that excitement that we all felt that got us into education. So again, there were pieces kind of for each individual building that were a little different, but the common theme, after we kind of all wrapped and got to share, kind of like the kids did too, each group shared out, the common theme all came back to students and how we can get that excitement for them as well, just like we had felt before, so.
So circling back around, Free State, we did our Think Wrong way back in August 8th or so, before we knew Think Wrong was going to kind of like lead us through. It was just an opportunity. We knew we were going to be redesigning. So right there, it was nice to have this opportunity to kind of think outside the box. We had like 20 different groups, because we have like, this is maybe just 1/5 of the room, quite a big staff. We went through a series of exercises that the students went through. We got to come up with kind of those moonshot ideas and the small bets, which also themed into making school more accessible to students in different ways. And two ideas that probably were just fun ones that stuck out were a grandma in every classroom. So whether or not that just means someone, I think that goes to the relationship, support, feeling warmth. It was one of those big ideas that, yeah, we could work into those smaller things. And then Firebird Farms, something that we ran a farm, and everything we did in all classes somehow related back to those farms, which again, could definitely, as we start talking about what ifs, a lot of these themes are, can we have a bigger theme that all of our classes tie into for that cross-curricular learning?
So the final piece was the Parent Blitz. And I'm going to invite Shannon to just share if you'd like, because you were there that evening. But there were parents from all 4 schools. And they went through the exact same thing. They went through the process of, what are the positives? What are things that you feel like need to be changed? And for me, this part was really telling. I felt like they were sharing things that I think a lot of us worry that our parents who went through traditional schools are going to come back around to traditional schools, and it was very far from that. It was really about, as a community, meeting the needs of all of our children, and that is they talked about free breakfast, free lunch, social and emotional opportunities for kids to just come in to learn regulation or how to regulate. Everything from schools being a lot more open to parents coming in and learning. So anyway, but I think the couple of big themes from the parent piece was there was a lot of talk about personalized plans for every student. A lot of, again, life skills that teach our students how to take care and manage themselves. That's that social and emotional piece. And I would say those were the 2 big things. Do you want to share, Shannon? It was very powerful. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing that was big, which kind of ties back to Free State's, just bringing our community more into our schools and getting our students out to our community. Just a lot of that. But I think you're right, Shannon. When we were doing this word cloud, there was a lot of, we want our kids to be happy. We want them to have a joy in learning. We want them to be motivated to want to go to school. We want them to be inspired to do big things. So again, a lot of things that you can't really measure in an academic assessment. So.
And now, the schedule you've all been waiting for. You know, the theme up until this point, up until today, was move slow so that we can move fast eventually. Today, we were moving fast, and we've been told we're going to keep moving fast from here on out. But you can see in October, we were taking our time and getting our stakeholders involved with our students, staff, and parent blitz. Today, we met off campus, out of a school setting, out at the KU building at East Hills. December 2nd, we'll do the same thing. We'll meet off school grounds and meet on KU campus. And December, January is going to be moving fast for us. We'll be out at Wakarusa in January, and then we'll report back to the board on February 24th with progress up until that point. We will then again meet out at Wakarusa with Greenbush for that day. March and April, we'll be at our own school campuses where KSDE coaches will come into our buildings and kind of coach us. So we'll meet in our buildings with our redesign teams, and coaches from KSD will come to our schools and advise us. And then May 8th, we will present our redesign plan to KSDE. And I'm sure we will have good news for you on May 11th as we report back to the board.
Okay, so Free State's why, and these sheets that you see up here are 3 sheets that we just nailed down today. We worked on this for a good 2 hours, maybe more. So after collecting a lot of data and through these blitzes from our staff, from our students, from our community members, we have 3 big areas that state our why. Balance, which is balance of workload. And so we just started throwing out all, our ideas of what that could mean or what that could look like. Having an advisory or seminar, study hall, whatever you want to call it, but having something additional in that schedule that is consistent and regular. Even if it's power hour lunch, flex mod schedules, having a just flexible schedule, whether or not that's year round, 0 through 8 hours, 4-day work student weeks, 5-day teacher weeks, something where we can create balance of all these other things that also connect. And kind of when you see yellow, those are a lot of common threads that go throughout our otherwise. So our second big reason is relevance, creating relevant learning for our students.